Good morning, welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering natural health on your Wednesday morning Rise and Shine. Natural health this morning here we're doing as we do our live talk program. And this morning here we're looking at a topic gaming disorder classified as disease. And so gaming disorder classified as a disease. And I'm just going to be talking about addiction and mental health. And I'll have a short little blurb on what's going on, just one facet of what's going on south of the border, down there with the migrant kids. So this is what we're doing here for our mental health or natural health this morning here. So welcome. Hopefully you had a blessed night rest and you're ready to take on today, this day that the Lord has given to you. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We thank you again for your love towards us. We thank you, dear Lord, for your mercies and the way that you continue to guide us along, that we might know, dear Lord, to walk humbly before thee. May you bless us, dear Lord, as we look at these things, as I look and share these things for our well-being. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So we're looking here this morning at this topic here, gaming disorder, classified as a disease. And so we're just going to talk about addiction or mental health again this morning here. And before I go into that article, I'll be sharing a short little blurb about what's happening, what could happen with the state of the children that are being held or separated from their parents. And period, I would say also the children that are coming unaccompanied. That's a lot of trauma to go through when you're young. Fighting for survival is probably a terrible thing, but sometimes it can be a good thing if you have to fight for survival. And so here, though, before I go into all that, I want to read two texts for you to start talking about mental health. And as I say, these two texts, I'll read it again later on because my main topic I'm going to talk about for the rest of the morning, or for most of this morning here, or this hour, is the gaming disorder. Gaming, a video game disorder. So in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 through 12, Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 through 12 says, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to the flesh shall reap of the flesh corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not." And so, as you know, part of it, and the article going to go into it, that part of the issue here with certain activities in life is that we have an addictive side to us. We can be very repetitive and compulsive in our behavior. This is why sin is such a terrible thing, because we get into a bad habit. We get stuck in the rut or in the mud that we keep spinning and can't get out of it. And what it is that so many young men and women, primarily young men, are caught up into this video game addiction. And as they get into this video game addiction, they get stuck. And it's a lot of idle time, not doing anything that's productive. As I say, it would be better for you to go outside and build a house than to play a game building a house. But the Bible here says, if you sow to the flesh, you shall reap corruption. And this designation by the World Health Organization on what's going on with the video game players is that they're saying it's now become a disease. And that's according to this text, Galatians. You sow to the flesh, you reap a disease. It just said it a different way. It says that if you sow to the flesh, you shall reap corruption. So corruption would be that you corrupt the flesh. And so the mind becomes corrupted, becomes dwarfed, and becomes diseased. And then a professional looking at you and say, well, you have the symptoms of other disorders, which I'll read it in a few minutes before I go to my first article. After I go to my first article, you have the symptoms of various different mental health disorders. It's the same symptoms. It's just you got your symptoms by playing video games. Why? Because you're sowing to the flesh through idleness, not accomplishing anything. While the Bible said, by the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread. The person said, by their video game playing they shall eat bread. And so in Proverbs chapter 9, verse 16 through 18, Proverbs 9, verse 16 through 18, It says here, whoso is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanted understanding, she said to him, stolen water are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But for but he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. And so we can see why so much of her guests are in the place of hell. And this could be just about anything. You know, you see so much of youngins and oldins and everyone going to the way of video games or going to the way of crazy musics, whether it be rock and roll or rap or whatever. And you could take just about any genre of something that a person becomes so overwhelmed with and addicted to, and you apply this text and it will work beautifully. And so it is with the whores. A person can get addicted to whores. And the end result is this text. It says, the whore says, hey, come, stolen water are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But ye know it not that the dead are there, and that her guest is in the depths of hell. And so many people, their lives have been ruined. And it seems so cute. Look at that. They're chopping people and killing people all day long for hours and hours on the video games. And this would be what it is. So this is what's happening. So while there's some young people fighting for survival, trying to get from the south to the north to a better life, most of them coming unaccompanied. Most of them coming unaccompanied with any parents, and then some are coming accompanied and they're being separated. There's other young people who are spending the rest of their lives, especially their adult lives, chopping down and killing fake soldiers and fake enemies. So this is where we're at in our world. A lot of confusion, a lot of problems. So anyhow, so I'll start out by reading the short article first. Just a quick blurb from the the mental health people. And it's written NBCnews.com by Maggie Fox. And it's entitled, Kids Can Suffer Permanent Damage from Border Separation. Trauma can damage, cause damage to both brain and body, doctor says. Into the article here, it says that Trump administration new policy of forcible separating children from their parents will cause irreparable damage to many of the children and is a great injustice, doctor says Friday. Medical groups are unanimous in denouncing the policy, which they note is not defined in any U.S. law. Besides being traumatic and unnecessary, the stress can damage brain development, they said. Quote, any forced separation is highly stressful for children and can cause lifelong trauma, as well as an increased risk of other mental illness such as depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, said the American Psychiatric Association, Dr. Alta Stewart. So, pause there. So, most naturally, I read that part again, such as depression, which is reasonable, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, most naturally. I could see this following a person throughout their life, especially because this happened at such a young age. Continue the article here. It says many families crossing the United States border are fleeing war and violence in their home country and are already coping with the effect of stress and trauma. These children deserve our protection and should remain with their families as they seek asylum. The Department of Homeland Security said Friday that 1,995 children were taken from their parents between April 19 and May 31st of this year. It's as bad and as harmful as seizing Native American children was in the past, says Dr. Colleen Kraft, president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. So pause there again. So you're probably well familiar with what happened to the Native American children and the policies that were inflicted upon them in America and Canada. And you can see the modern result is that high rates of depression and self-esteem problem and all kind of stuff that happen because when you have people that just constantly being subjugated and beaten down, some succumb to it, and majority succumb to it, and so this is tough. Continue reading here says, when you think about our history of separating Native American kids and sending them to boarding schools and Japanese internment camps and other human rights violation, this is one that happens before our eyes, and that's why we need to speak out against it, Kraft told NBC News. Kraft says some of the detained children in Kraft saw, some of the detained children in April. It was really devastating to see, she said. The first room we went into was a toddler room, and there was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 2 years old, who was just sobbing and crying and was inconsolable. Staff told Kraft they were forbidden to physically comfort the children, and we all knew that the problem was her mother wasn't there, and she wanted her mother, and none of us could fix that. It was even more distressing. We know that separation of children from loving caregiving givers promotes something called toxic stress in their brains, Kraft said. There are certain patterns and stress that results in disruptions of brain architecture in children and can result in young children in developmental delay. Uh, Pardon me. I pause here again, swallow bad here. I pause here again to say this. Note that most of the time when people, individual have addiction and other type of mental problem, it is often linked to a childhood trauma. And if you ever note, but if you've dealt with people or if you've ever had childhood trauma, most of the problems that we struggle with in life comes from when we were children, and something that we traumatically experience, and it takes us years to work through it, and some people just never work through it. Very important to note. I just want to note that. It can also cause physical symptoms, says Dr. Ana Maria Lopez, president of the American College of Physicians. The lifetime impact range from behavioral problems and mental health trauma to a person's physiology, she said. Pediatricians speak out against Trump immigration order. It can raise the risk of chronic illness, cardiovascular disease, and even cancer, Lopez added. From a health perspective, this approach is really hurtful and damaging to families. And I would agree with that because, most of the time when we talk about cancers and certain even autoimmune diseases, we're talking about stress-related diseases where a person not only experienced stress in the past, but they're going through lifelong trauma from that stress and psychological problems that they have to deal with. And so this is something that's the reality here. It says health specialists at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health signed a letter saying that the policy violates international convention. These families separation violate the most widely ratified of all human rights convention, the Convention on the Rights of Child. The letter, signed by the school's Dean Ellen McKenzie, Vice Dean Dr. Joseph Sharfstein, and others, read. They dispute the administration argument that they are treating the would-be immigrants like they would any other criminals. In fact, the administration is separating families who are following procedures to apply for asylum at the border, not having violated any law, they said. Moreover, other families who have been detained after crossing the border are fleeing violence for a safer life and are seeking asylum at the first opportunity to do so. These families have not committed a felony and should not be treated as threat to public safety. The Trump administration blamed the policy of separating children from their family on previous Democratic administration. a false assertion. There is no law requiring the separation of children from parents at the border. Under previous policy, children were usually allowed to stay with their parents in shelters while awaiting legal process. The American Academy of Family Physicians weighed in on the policy also. Quote, "We stand with our fellow medical societies in urging the federal government to withdraw its policy of requiring separation of migrating children from their caregivers and instead give priority to supporting families and protecting the health and well-being of the children within those families," the group said. Border officials have also defended the policy by saying they are worried about human trafficking. If you have an adult male and a teenage girl, that probably makes sense, Kraft said. If you have a 2-year-old crying for mommy, that is probably not a human trafficker, which is logical speech right there. So that's something that to note as we talk about natural health, that this is where Christ says the worst punishment for that is reserved are for those who abuse little kids. Because although the president is doing this because he want to stop all these illegals from coming into the country, he's basically saying, I'm going to punish these kids. The parents are being punished, but the kids are going to leave with a bigger trauma. I'm going to punish these kids in order to force the Democrats to shut down the border and to stop this from going on. But this type of trauma is lasting trauma. As I say, you think about most of our problems that we deal with as adults, most of the bad habits, most of the fears that we have, most of the self-esteem, whatever problem that we have, they come from things that we suffered as children: abuse, rejection, being bullied, being targeted, being whatever, any type of coldness. If you see a cold person, very cold, C-O-L-D, human being as an adult, take it that they probably were very treated very cold when they were young. A lot of what, as I say, we have to psychologically deal with in our marriages, in our careers, is things that happen to us when we were young. So that's why it's important to understand why Christ would say we have to do our utmost to be kind and treat the kids in a right way. To say that you can't console a child crying for their mom is cruel at best and unusually inhumane. Much less, forget about these people are even Christian. Just saying, as a human being, you should expect better from a human being. I understand you would expect better from a lion or a dog, but human beings, you should expect better. So this is the level where we're at. And remember, this is on top of the fact that it is predicted that America will ultimately divorce itself from God. So we see where this is going, because these are primarily the Christians that are pushing this. This is what's make this weird. So because they want to protect their country, very weird. So this is the type of trauma that is being inflicted. And as you know, they say that some of the people that are coming over the border are not even trying to go through the direct port of entry and seek asylum. They're trying to jump over a river, whatever that river is, and cross over. So that's important to note, because if some are coming just because the poverty is so bad. Some are coming to escape violence and various different things. So as you know, if wherever you are, listen to me. If you live in a yard, you have a yard. You don't live in, say, an apartment complex, and there's a person running from being attacked. Say a mob is going after a person or a criminal, and the person running to your yard. At that point, the person is in your yard illegally. They have no legal right to be in your yard. And so you can get out your gun and you can say, well, since you're not in my yard legally, I shot the person because they're illegal. But they're just running from a bunch of mobs. And you can see the problem there. And this is why I say the history do repeat itself, because I can see how often probably a slave was running from his master and somebody will find him probably on their property and turn him back over to the master because he's breaking the law, I guess. But you understand that's not how life is. So with that, you can see the trauma. So that's why it's important not only to speak up, but to do whatever you can to help out any of these children and these parents who are fleeing from whatever poverty. Poverty is something to be fled from. Paul says it very clearly. Don't give me riches, so I forget God, and don't give me poverty, so I do something again. I can't remember. I think forget God also. Uh, Grind in poverty is a terrible thing. That's why God had it in Israel that there will be no grind in poverty. And riches make people become crazy. You can see that from this administration. It's an administration of multi-millionaires and billionaires. And the cruelty is going to get worse because riches make them forget God, it seems. So let's go down to a bigger trend. I don't know if a bigger trend, but a trend that is sweeping the country. It's bigger in the sense of numbers, not in the sense of news coverage. And it's the video gaming, the video game, right? So this is a bigger trend in the sense of numbers. If you go into YouTube, Twitch, various different networks, you find so many young men. I when I say young men, I mean adult male, young male. So teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s that grew up with Nintendo, like myself, and are into video games. And so this thing here is something that I think I've talked about it here, probably not. Talk about it at church. And I remember when I got a video game. I got my brother to get me a video game, Nintendo console, and I remember I would play that for hours. And after a while, I realized it started to take over your life. And at that age, in my teens, I didn't understand addiction. I heard about it, but since I never, at that point, not at that point, period, I never used drugs, I didn't understand what an addiction is, literally. Just something I read in the physician desk reference. I had one at home, and I would go and look at the diseases. And I would be fascinated with that. And just the idea of an addiction, like I know, and I read about the scheduled drugs and stuff like that. I didn't never get it, but I'll see people under the influence, but never still understand because I never experienced it. This was my first time experiencing what addiction was. And so if you hear me here say human beings have an addictive side, it is true. You have to be aware of that. We all have an addiction, and it could be to one drug, substance, behavior, whatever it is. And we have to be aware of that, every single one of us. This is part of the sinful nature and part of what God has programmed us with, but sin messes us up. So here we go now. So with this thing here, when you get into that addiction, it basically is like it freezes your life, just like any addiction. And a person who's in this addiction is similar to a person who's in like cocaine, crack, alcohol, sex, video gaming, but video, watching movies, any activity that just done repetitively and they start to consume the life. So it's interesting to note that the World Health Organization is now coming out and saying the gaming, there's such a thing called gaming disorder, which this should have been said years ago because I experienced this in the 90s. And I remember there's a certain point where I realized the only solution to the problem, without fully understanding what was going on in my life, it was to get rid of the console. And at this time, those consoles were hot. And I just basically gave it away. I told my friend, you want this? And they say, yeah. And I said, you can have it. And that was my only way to break it. I had to basically just give away the thing, right? All right. So I'm going to read this article here to you, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this idea here that the World Health Organization came out and dubbed this thing and a disorder. And this is taken from NBC News, written again by Maggie Fox. And it's entitled World Health Organization Adds Gaming Disorder to Disease Classifications. This isn't about kids playing Fortnite or Call of Duty for a few hours in the basement. As with any medical disorder, the person affected must be seriously impaired. So they wanted to make that clarification as I'm going to go into the article because the gaming industry is not happy. So into the article here now, it says the World Health Organization proposed adding gaming disorder to its new comprehensive manual of disease classification on Monday, angering the gaming industry but reassuring doctors who hope it may make treatment more easily available. Some US experts say it will make little difference when it comes to helping people with the disorder, at least in the United States, but others said it would give legitimacy to a disorder that some people are reluctant to recognize. The World Health Organization added both online and offline gaming disorder to its latest draft of the International Classification of Diseases manual called ICD 11. This isn't about kids spending a few hours in the basement playing Fortnite or Call of Duty. As with any medical disorder, the person affected must be seriously impaired. Gaming disorder is characterized by a pattern of persistent or recurrent gaming behavior, digital gaming, video gaming, which may be online or offline, the manual says. The symptoms listed by World Organization echo symptoms of for other addictive and compulsive disorders. They include lack of control over gaming, giving gaming precedence over other life interests and daily activity, and continuation or escalation of gaming despite negative consequences. The behavior pattern is of significant severity to result in significant impairment in personal, family, social, educational, occupational, and other important areas of function, who said, having recognized having recognition from the World Health Organization is significant, said Dr. Petros Levonis, chair of the psychiatry at the New Jersey Medical School at Rutgers University, whose ICD-11 is used widely outside the United States for classifying all diseases. In the US, the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostics and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, the DSM, is used to define mental illness. It mentions gaming disorder in its latest edition, DSM-5, but say more research is needed before listing it as a separate disorder. The gamers play compulsive to the exclusion of other interests, and their persistent and recurrent online activity result in clinically significant impairment or distress. People with this condition endanger their academic or job functioning because of the amount of time they spend playing, it says. Douglas Gentile of Iowa State University has done some of the influential research into the possibility of gaming addiction. I and many others had assumed that the gaming is not really a problem but a symptom of other problems, he told NBC News. Many thought it was somehow a failure of morals or self-control. To see if it was, Gentile team followed children who played games for several years. That's not what we found. We found that when kids became addicted, their depression increased, their anxiety increased, their social phobia increased, and their grades decreased, Gentile said. So just a pause there. So notice here, major information there, that the more the person got addicted to playing games, so the person started at this rate level, the more they play games and the addiction increases, the more they get depressed. This is why when I read in the beginning, I'll read again, that when you sow to the flesh, you reap corruption. It is weird because the more one get addicted to anything, you would think that is the thing makes them happy, but it's not making them happy, it's making them sad, and it's making them get worse. So notice here, they become addicted, their depression now because of that addiction increase, Their anxiety increase because again you're trying to win per se, but not fully. Their social phobias increase. So if I had problem interacting with people and fears socially, that doesn't get better by addiction of the game. It makes it worse. And their grades decrease. Continue reading here. It says, when kids were able to back off from obsessive gaming, their symptoms reverse, he said. Gentile thinks medical organization, health insurers, and others should pay attention to the WHO designation. This isn't an issue of opinion, it's an issue of science, he said. This is a major scientific and medical organization. They don't do things lightly and without reason. So just pause again. So imagine a person go to a doctor and they say they have depression. The doctor says, okay, here's some drugs. But the problem can't be solved by drugs per se because their problem is not a chemical imbalance. Their problem is that they need to pull back from the game or stop the game. The moment they stop the game, their depression decreases, their anxiety decreases, their social phobia decreases, and their grades increases. And without any of this is what I'd observe as a young person. I realized, wait a minute, if I pull back from this thing, I'm back to life because I have to find something else to do. If I get rid of it altogether, well, guess what happened? I found something to do. I started going to the football field more, started going to the beach more, I started going hunting for coconuts or mangoes or nesberry more. I started to do some more. I find other activities. I go find a friend, I hang with a friend. So that's going to increase my social behavior. But the more you do the game, is the more you're like, well, the game feeling for somebody else, but the game is not pleasant. It's stress because you're trying to win and stay longer in the game. So we keep moving. The American Psychological Association has long fought to get the World Health Organization's ICD use over the DSM when determining health insurance coverage. Levonius said he hoped the WHO designation would boost research that got sidelined in the 1980s when tobacco companies then being sued for selling addictive and deadly products argued that tobacco was not unique and that companies should not be penalized for selling addictive products. They basically were saying that any behavior can be addictive. This whole mayhem set us back about 20 to 30 years. Now there is renewed interest and excitement. Why does it even matter? In the US, it's important for one major reason. Health insurance won't pay for treating someone for a disorder that doesn't exist. That's where the rubber meets the road, says Keith White, executive director of the National Council on Problem Gaming. And even if there is a designation, it can be difficult to find treatment and to get insurance company to pay for it. Gambling addiction has been in the DSM since 1980, and we still struggle to get routine reimbursement, White said. For one thing, health insurance companies don't have to cover mental and behavioral disorders. This is something the Affordable Healthcare Act was going to address, but it is still regulated at the state-by-state level, White said. What we have found is that when you are dealing with insurance companies, it depends on what state you are in and who your therapist is. And that presumes people even recognize that they have a problem, White said. So most actually, the gamer would have to say, I have a problem. I'm not bathing. I'm anxious. I'm depressed. Blah blah. I need help. And just as with gamblers, gamers may think they are they're professionals. That makes a gambling or gaming disorder different from a substance abuse disorder. So I'll point again because this is I've seen this. There's a lot of people right now, they're gamers on YouTube and they're quite famous. And you can imagine they might think, oh no, I'm doing this for a living, I'm a professional, but they're really an addict. Kanti says you can become a professional drinker or a professional smoker, White said, but gamblers feel like the more they play, the better they get. The better they get, the more they win. So quitting is the last thing you want to do, and you are one bet away from winning everything. In the end, however, winning is not the goal. Someone who gambles once or twice for fun will buy an island if they win a big jackpot. A gambling addict, White says, put it right back into the game. Addiction is not about winning. Addiction is about staying in the action, he says. The Entertainment Software Association has fought against any classification of gaming addiction. It is extremely important to note the proposed draft circulating is not final and it is still under discussion and review, the organization said in a statement. It claims that there is debate in the medical community about the designation. Jen McLean, executive director for the International Game Developers Association, also attacked the move. She says our organization support responsible gaming, and we believe that WHO has done a tremendous disservice to our players, creators, and all forms of media by creating a gaming disorder as a disease, she says. I pause there. That statement sounds like, the regular cut and paste statement that the Tobacco Association or the Alcohol Association, if there's such an association, would make. We promote responsible gaming, and the alcohol people will say the same thing, that we promote responsible drinking. You can't. The thing controls the person. Anyhow, Gentile said researchers do not necessarily believe that games themselves are somehow harmful. The majority of people don't have a severe problem with it. But Gentile said his research showed that some children do indeed become addicted, and he estimated that anywhere between 1 to 10% of kids who play games develop disorders. That's over 3 million children making serious damage to their lives because of the way in which they are gaming. He said, until this issue gets recognized by the medical community as a legitimate problem, it will be really hard for them to get any help. And they say one to what? It's a 1 to 10% is more like 10 to probably 100%. So this is the type of numbers that I believe in. So that's that thing there. So notice here that again, there's something about us as human beings that we have this kind of compulsive behavior, and our compulsive behavior can manifest in just about anything in life. And for some, it's drugs, some it's alcohol, some it's gaming, some it's whatever. But somehow they, like with cigarette, the thing that the person is using it for, say the person is using a cigarette because they want to, calm their nerves, end up being the thing that causes the person to act jittery and anxious and whatever. And so the solution for the problem becomes the problem. And this is why one has to watch that type of stuff. So a person could be playing, whether it be a Fortnite or a Call of Duty, and they're chopping them up, or they're doing an adventure video game or sporting video game. And after a while, as I said, they just want to stay in the game, not just want to win. And they will say the person is doing it for play, but as you know, it becomes from play to just addiction that just ruins the life. So this is what's happening in the world. And as we say, this is what's happening not just in the life of people, but especially in young people's life, and more young adults and grown men who their life is taken over by gaming and their productivity is gone. So when I say this addiction, this is the Gentile person here just being nice. He said 1 to 10%. And if you know probably 10 people that's do a lot of gaming, you know that that number is weird, is way higher. The number is way higher because you know how many young men that their life is just being messed up, and the one thing they have in common is the game. A lot. Now I'm gonna say probably, probably the number is only 10, 15, 20%. Because if a lot of young people, if they're not using the video game to destroy themselves, it's alcohol. If it's not alcohol, it's drugs. And if it's not drugs, it's something else. Just a lot of destructive behavior amongst young people. So this is why we believe in the word and in the deliverance that Jesus Christ come to set the captive free. So I read again Galatians chapter 6 verse 7 through 9. Galatians 6 verse 7 through 9. It says, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to the flesh, to his flesh, shall after flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall after Spirit reap life everlasting." So it's investment. You're invested in something. And so most of the day, a person sitting there playing a video game is invested in nothing on the surface. They say it's just they're being entertained. It doesn't bring joy or peace. It doesn't bring happiness. But anyhow, they're being entertained. But they're investing in something that will reap corruption. It will not reap something good. As we see, as I say, so many people's lives are showing that it's not reaping anything good. Because the aim, as you say, is to stay in the game. And this is why the hours can pile up. Because the person is trying to survive in the game, stay longer, beat the next level, get to the next level. And by doing this, the addictive side kicks in. And now it's not about what makes a person happy. It's not about joy. It's not about peace. It's not about, enjoying oneself anymore. It's just about winning. And you can see that with games and gamers. Been there, done that. It's not about, but it makes me so happy. No, I need to win. So that compulsiveness in winning becomes the drive. And then you say to the person, what are you winning? What am I winning? I ain't winning nothing. Just winning. That's it. So, and he said, let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. So notice, doing well, it takes some effort. Doing video games is going to take some effort. Doing all the addictive behavior will take some effort. So it's a time you can just I could just kick back and just go ahead and enjoy that thing. And what it is that, just keep on picking up your cross and following Jesus. It's better that way. Again, quickly, Proverbs chapter 9, verse 16 and 17 stated that whosoever is simple, let him turn in hither. And as for him that wanted understanding, she said to him, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. And so that's what it is. The gaming industry, with their developers and their players and everything, they're saying, whoever is simple, come on over here. And they're saying, whoever lack it or want understanding, come over. Oh, son, you don't have any understanding? Come on over here and play our games. Oh, you simple? Oh, come on over here and play our games. But the person really? I can come and play? And it's yeah, come. Stolen water is good. You can be a winner. And guess what happened? The person will never be a winner. Because every day the person getting up trying to win at a game and they're losing at life. They're going to end up being a loser because they're just wasting time and money. And if you say to them, oh, son, you could develop skills. It's oh, no, I have mad skills with my fingers. And I say this, and hopefully you have mercy on me when I say this, because I was one. I was one of them one time. Stolen water is sweet. You can be a winner. You won. You beat the game. I beat many a game, win many games, reach to the end of the game. Yay. And what did you win, son? I won. So it's not real. It's like being a thief. You never work for it. So the person is losing at their grades, losing at their marital relationship. They're losing at their health. instead of going outside and getting fit, they're becoming blobbish, like a blob, like a bigger lord of fat. But they're winning at the game. So it's like a trick. And so that's why, as she says here, or it says here, but ye know it not that the dead are there. It's the dead. And many of them proverbially are dying in their mother's basement. I know some of them personally. Men in their 20s, 30s, not doing a thing with their life, but they're winning every day. And, it's like this famous actor. I can't remember his name. He used to be a comedian and he crashed and burned a few years ago. And he was buying expensive supercars for prostitutes. And he was saying he was winning. I can't remember his name. I think his name is Martin Sheen or something. And then after he came to his senses, he realized that he just gave away all his money to these whores. So he was not winning. But that's what it is. It says, he know it, because in that sense, that addiction is with the prostitutes. He know it not that the dead are there and that her guests are in the depths of hell, because that's an addiction that he just keep paying and he never get to the end of it. So I know this, and I was like, oh man, we all have this addictive side and it can ruin us. Because we get addicted to something that we can't let it go, even no matter how much it's messed up our life. But I think the gaming is fascinating only because the idea of it is that you're trying to stay longest in the game and get the best score and be the winner. And these are it's the losers in society, because they're not winning. What are they winning? All that time and hours and the skills, mental ability that they develop, if they put that into blessing their fellow human being, being fit, taking care of their bodies, developing a skill to make money, developing abilities to invent stuff and be creative, they really would be winning. But they're spending all this time and this skill. Many of these young men, they could have a PhD in the amount of time they put into a video game. They could have double and triple PhDs. They could basically build industries. They could make America great again. But you say, if you go to the president and say, look, what we need to do is get these young men out of their mother's basement and let them win. And they would say, oh, no, what we need to do is get rid of the Mexicans because they're destroying our countries. I said, but how about this young man here? He already legal. Why don't you get him to be happy and go out there and get a job and get a spouse and start multiplying and start building a business? But no. See, when you understand what's going on, you see the problem. It is like these games, they're winning. And you say, what you win, son? Nothing. Proverbs 20 verse 17 said, bread of deceit is sweet to a man, but afterward his mouth shall be filled with gravel. Bread of deceit. Because to me, that's all of that is just same concept to me here. It's just bread of deceit. You're not winning anything. Well, what do you win? A person spends 3 hours every day playing video games. And that's a drop in the bucket for many people. I've heard people doing 10, 15 hours. If you spend 3 hours every day playing a video game, so that's light. And when you finish, you're winning nothing. If you spend 3 hours every day go riding a bicycle on a flat surface, it has to be flat. If you're doing 3 hours a day riding a bicycle, you fit. And you need to talk to me. I have some supplements for you and some advice. But if you spend 3 hours a day physically going out there and winning, you are winning. And the person who's spending 3 hours a day playing video game, watching video movies, taking drugs at 3 hours, drinking alcohol at 3 hours, they are losing. You go to many of the poorest areas in the country and you find that you have a lot of losers, and you say, what are you doing there? What, playing video game? They're drinking alcohol, they're taking drugs, and they're spending probably no less than 3 hours every day watching daytime TV and watching all that madness on TV and making their minds become destroyed, screwing up their brains. And simply what they could do is just do something that's productive. Go back to school. You spend 10, 15 hours a day playing a video game. And if you did the same amount of time, forget about even just taking any area of study. Go on online, buy books within that area of study. So you want to know rocketry. I'm almost going to guarantee you get a job working in the industry after doing 15 hours a day for 1 year, reading books on that one subject, biology, chemistry. Just say, I'm going to read books on biology or chemistry 10, 15 hours a day. What some of these people are doing, say they're professional gamers, they are losing, they're not winning anything. So that's what the Bible here, Proverbs 20 verse 17 says, bread of deceit is sweet to a man. It's a lying bread. It's not a true bread. It's not bread. It's a deception. But afterward his mouth shall be filled with gravel, because it's a bread of deceit. Ain't nothing there. I've never met anybody who like, oh yeah, I'm doing so good. How you doing good? You're wasting time. It's idleness. And so this is where they're right. The American, the World Organization comes out and say, hey, look, this is a disorder. It's like any other disorder. It destroys the life. And it's an addiction, just like coke or meth or marijuana or anything like that. They make the person just lazy and don't want to do anything. And instead of their life they're winning, they're losing. They're not building anything. They're not starting a business. They're not building products. They're not going out there and winning. They're not finding themselves a wife. A lot of times the wife already find them, but they can't answer to the call. So they're not doing anything. And this is what it is. And so in 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 8 through 12, and we know this is going to increase as we go closer to the end of time, because it's just a whole bunch of lies. If it's not the miracles that are coming out of Hollywood, which is witchery and wizardry, is the miracles that's coming out of Silicon Valley with its video games. It's just a bunch of deception, making people feel like they're winning. All the big hits out of Hollywood nowadays is these superhero, these mutants. And so you're living a life in flab and disease and weakness, going to watch superheroes, and you're a fanboy. You're losing. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 8 through 12 says, and then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they may believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but have pleasure in unrighteousness. And so this can be certainly some of the life of a video game head. I could say I would be under that delusion. It's a delusion. It's a deception. You're winning. Now, what are you? It's just so crazy when you think about it. You're winning, but you're winning nothing. Your social life is a mess. Your moral life is a mess. Your spiritual life is a mess. You can't preach to people who play video games all day long. They ain't going to listen to it. It's boring to them because they're an addict. They can't keep their mind straight, and they just can't. Especially a Sabbath keeper, a person who keep the Sabbath in a video game addict, it don't work. The game's gonna win, but really, what's winning is not the games; it's the addiction. Just the same way with alcohol, drugs, all that stuff. So the person's there and they're winning, and you say, "What are you winning?" I'm beating the game. What is the game? The game is a fiction. It's fictional. It's not real. It's like reading a book that is fictional. You're not reading anything because it's not about anything. It's imaginary. You're just reading somebody's imagination. The game is an imagination. It's not real. The real game is life. The real challenge is life. The real enemy is the devil and some of the people that he controls. And this is where your challenge is, and you have to fight that battle. And every day you have to get up, you have to pick up your cross and follow Jesus. This is the real challenge of life. The real struggles that we have is that we have some levels that we have to beat, and each stage in our life we have a level that we have to beat, and we have to hit those buzzers and hit that mushroom or that whatever, and silver coin or American dollars are going to fall out, and we pick up the dollars and put in our pocket and keep running. That's the game of life. You have to get up every day. You have to have your energy. You have to take your herbs and eat your veggies. And that's the challenges that you face. And that's the thing that you have to do. You have to deal with enemies within and enemies without, you being an enemy yourself. Sometimes your worst enemy. Those are the things that you have to struggle with. So if a person coming to me and saying that they're winning, they're not winning anything, because the big game that they're supposed to be playing, they're not playing. You sitting down playing a video game while you're supposed to get out there and get fit because there's an enemy running after you. You have to be fit to run from the enemy. You're not spending time praying, meditating, studying the Word of God. This is how you win this game. And so the game that they're winning at is a fictional game. But the real game is the game of life, is whipping them all day long. And each time, somebody say, "Oh, son, it's time for you to get married." They're like, "What? Married? I'm not prepared for that. I'm prepared for winning the next stage of the game." And I'm like, wow. "Oh, where are the kids?" "Well, I'm not really. Well, I have some kids, but the mother hate me. The government hate me because they're trying to force me to pay. And I really can't pay right now because I need to win the next game, the next challenge, the next edition of the game." That's where the problem is, and that's the reality. And some might not play the game to this level. Somebody might tell me that there's a person out there that has a PhD that plays the game and stuff like that. But in my line of business, I see all the time people who even have a career, have a job, but they're failing and they're just barely hanging on sometimes to the job or to life. Their family life is a mess. Their kids is a mess. It's all kind of mess around them. Their finances is a mess. And you say, "Man, you seem like you're sleeping." And they say, "Oh, no, I'm awake at my work, at my job, because I have to do that so I can keep living and eating." But the moment they come back home, they're in the video game. And I'm like, man, when was the last time you read the Bible? When was the last time you prayed? But you're playing games. And this is where we don't want to be, because if we're in that situation, then we end up being messed. I'll read this one to close here. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 9 and 10. Jeremiah 17 verse 9 and 10 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doing." So when we see mess in our life, there's a cause and effect. When we're sleeping at the wheel, when we know that the devil is our adversary going around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, and we sit there and get devoured and eaten, we watch others around us get devoured and eaten, and then we say, "Man, that was bad," and then we turn back around and continue playing video games. We're making a mistake. And when we watch in our life that we're depressed and feel sad, and if the end result we're feeling sad and depressed and we're losing our social graces, but we're playing video games, that's a mess. And so much of the young people, you can't even have a conversation with them. They don't know how to interact and talk, but they know to win video games. So they're losing at life and winning at games. This ought not to be. And so if a person is going through this, as they say here, seek help, seek professional help. Recognize that you're not a professional video gamer, but you are addict and you need some addictive counseling and therapy. Hopefully you can find the help that you need, and keep listening here, because as we try to give even some help to a person that's going through addiction, so you can have some intellectual, doctrinal, moral, spiritual guidance as to why you should fight addiction in all its forms. Let us pray. We thank you, Lord, again for your deliverance. We thank you, dear Father, for the guidance that you give us, dear Lord, that we should have nothing of this world to have the precedence and the control over our minds, only but the Spirit and your word, your commandment. May you bless us, dear Lord, that we might walk humbly before thee. We might seek in all our ways to try to acknowledge thee and to help our fellow human beings. Bless us as we go through this day. This is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for being with me here on a Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow morning as we do our current events. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with Jesus.